Military Special Interest Group, and it's just fantastic to see Paddy once again after the summer recess, who I'm going to ask to introduce our special guest today. But we have Tim Jones, founder and CEO of Positive Transition Limited, talk about the future of holistic transition. We're looking forward to this, Tim. But Paddy, I've got a little bit of a cough and a cold, as you might appreciate, so I'm going to hand straight over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, John. Thank you. And yeah, welcome back, everyone. Hopefully others will join as we trot along. Hope everyone had a great summer. Managed to get some downtime in some shape or form. So since we last met, some of it's been the same old story, industrial action, but noting that the BMA have upped the ante now by combining both consultants and junior doctors. First one tomorrow, I believe, and the rhetoric that comes along with that. Last week, it was last week, the waiting list is now top 7.7 million waiting in secondary care. And of course, we had the outcome of the Letby case, which was always coming, but interesting some of the reactions to it. And bearing in mind some of the conversations we've had in the sidebars in the past, and yet more calls for more regulation, like we need more regulation. It's a truly awful case, understandably. But it's interesting how, the moment the ink isn't dry on a judgment, that, all these lines to take and messages come out. And one of the prominent ones was that, well, clearly we need to regulate healthcare managers, just like we do healthcare clinicians and everything else. I imagine there's some people who might be interested in that idea, others not. We had our Future Leaders Conference last week, and with the great privilege of General Messenger joining us. Some of you may know that General Messenger co-chaired a report on NHS leadership, and his view was that actually regulation of healthcare managers is not the way to go necessarily. It's about better talent management, like we would have in the military, for instance, maybe a better educational standard and curriculum around management, etc., etc. And of course, he pointed out that, when you take, for instance, appraisals for doctors, for instance, that wouldn't necessarily have stopped shipment. But, by way of example, and, with the sort of extension of not quite appraisal for nurses, but some of the increasing or up in the ante with regulation, professional regulation around nurses and everything else, we've still had Shrewsbury and Telford. We still have Gosport recently, Mockamore Abbey, etc., etc. So who knows what way this thing is going to go. But quite an interesting time over those summer months. Well, look, Tim, thank you so much for joining us and giving us an insight to your app. I have to declare an interest of sorts and a fascination. I am a patron of a transition charity, West Midlands-based charity called Stepway. And I think that the work that you, they and others do is just phenomenal, absolutely incredible. And, speaking as Paddy here, I always get the feel that there's so much more we can do in this sense, whilst people are still in uniform. So pleased to have you come along. Tim is the founder and CEO of Positive Transition, and he's come to talk about the future of holistic transition and how their innovative app can help veteran service leavers and their dependents successfully transition to life. You're a former Armed Forces serving member yourself, so that obviously puts you in a very, very good place in terms of understanding the requirement. So I'll take no more of your time and hand over to you, Tim, and really looking forward to hear you talk today. Thank you.
Paddy, thank you very much. And thank you for the warm welcome and for the invite to come and share the work that we're doing. Just over the next few minutes, what I'm going to do is just present the platform to you that we call Plus T. And then what I'll do, I've got a few slides. It's not death by PowerPoint by any stretch, but it's just a few slides that centers on particular scenarios that demonstrates the utility of the platform across the broader aspects of that transition journey that those that join the military, unless you're intending to leave in a wooden box, will encounter. So if I may, I will share my screen. I'll just make sure that I'm showing the correct one, and hopefully everybody should be able to see that. So this is the dashboard of the platform. Now, I served 11 years, as Paddy hinted. I left in '98 and pretty much soon afterwards set up a networking organization to support people in the employment pathway out of the armed forces. And we very quickly recognized that employment is just a very small part of that transition journey. So through 25 years of experience, God, sounds a long time when I say it, but through that journey, we've picked up a vast amount of contacts and experience. So what we've got as you log on to the platform, and we're currently, I'm demonstrating the development platform today. And so this mood tracker will come up, but the mood tracker essentially captures an individual's mood. We do recognize that it is a self-reporting tool, but we're looking to underpin it in time with the development of an ethical AI, working with partners that also has a suicide pathway intervention process as well that can combine with the well-being aspects of the platform. The green thumb is good, amber thumb is not so good. Red thumb means you're really struggling. And what that will do is via your mobile, it will send a text to your battle buddies that you had as part of your onboarding process. And if you get into crisis, then you can revert to battle buddies. We're working closely with Joe Walcott at the Samaritans, or if you've self-harmed in any way or feel that you are a danger to yourself or others, you can call the emergency services via your mobile. The initial concept of the platform was very much around supporting not just the person in uniform, but the non-serving family members as well, in being able to understand the process that they needed to go through to exit the armed forces or the serving armed forces community. So delivering them a timeline, we believe, was one of the ways of making sure that A, they didn't feel overwhelmed, but B, made sure that they covered all the aspects of transition that was critical to improve prospective outcomes of that transition journey. Overdue tasks are clearly everything you should have done before today. Current tasks are today and 7 days out, and then upcoming tasks are 7 days to 2 months. And the reason we've done that kind of radar window, 7 days to 2 months, is to make sure that people feel, first of all, they're not overwhelmed by the hundreds of things they've got to achieve, but equally they get drip fed it and have the facility to be able to be preemptive and proactive around the activities they need to deliver. I'll come back to the progress compass, but we've got the first gamification of the platform on here that shows just how well somebody's getting on. But you can move these into priority positions. So if you're going to do some work around your well-being, children, and perhaps engage with the civilian community, then you can put those into priority positions. And then what I refer to as the digital equivalent of the kitchen calendar, which sits on your dashboard. And the idea of that is you get the family view as to what's happening and what commitments people have, such that there isn't a calendar conflict generated, and it just mitigates prospective family stress. As people engage with the platform, then these elements start to populate what we're calling the progress compass. Now, for the individual, this is a visual demonstration of how much they've achieved. And so for the non-serving individual, it's a confidence checker. But for the serving person, this is provides a level of governance and provenance around conversations with command. So as a young troop commander, I'd be getting letters off the NAFI saying that one of my particular subordinates had got issues with their finances. But if I had a conversation with them, it was very difficult to engage in that conversation, and they'd be rather nebulous. No, tickety-boo, boss, all sorted. This actually informs conversation, but we anticipate that this could well be used on a peer-to-peer kind of basis. That if a young Lance Corporal or able seaman is struggling with particular elements in the financial education piece, they might prefer to talk to a peer. And if they can't answer, then it could be a conversation that's had with seniors or perhaps officers. But this captures the engagement somebody has with the tool and starts to inform the command structure just how engaged people are in the process. From there, we've got a couple of levels of content across accommodation, employment, finance, education, health, well-being, children and community. And this is what we refer to as the Netflix approach. So navigable, intuitively navigable system with the quick menu on the left-hand side, and then the various tabs across the top. So this is a system, the various opportunities you get to look at future careers. And this is effectively the career transition partnership in a box with a series of videos on how to write your CV, followed by a quiz, the good old military instruction techniques, confirm assimilation, and then a downloadable asset such as the CV template for you to start populating it. Now, unlike CTP, which is classroom and workbook based, but we'll wait and see what the offering is beyond, well, towards the end of this month as the contract is relet. But unlike classroom and workbook based, this is something that somebody can come back to and keep repeating until they really understand what needs to go in their CV. But this can be further enhanced as part of a contract with Defence to do additional sessions around specific aspects or modules within the CV. It can be done to position your CV into particular industries, rail, health, renewables. It can be done to actually capture particular target roles that you are looking for, whether it's project management, security, business ownership, or whatever that might be. But it can all be done. And then below there's some sessions on interview techniques. And because this is a course that needs to be watched serially, you cannot watch that video until you've completed the first one. We then start to identify where people are going to be living. Now, we're going to be changing the user interface on this, but let's just put in, we'll all move into Sheffield. And what this does as you save that is that starts to populate the platform with other useful information. I'm talking to IHSC, let's talk about health. A small video on how to register with a GP surgery, but then we can provide you with a list of where the local GPs are. And critically, managing data sets, we can share with you which ones of those are veteran friendly accredited GP surgeries. We are aware through Robin Simpson of the RCGP that they're now up to around 36% of the GPs across the UK have signed up. But you might, as an individual, just be prepared to go an extra mile or so to be able to access a veteran-friendly accredited GP surgery. Nevertheless, if you click on it, there's a little bit more data around contact details, the opening times, and then additional services offered. Now, as you might imagine, that's quite useful, being able to consolidate that into a one-stop shop, where we've added additional value that if somebody is working away from home and they require some medical assistance, they can click on the location button and find out where the nearest surgeries are to them. As you might imagine, we can add urgent care, walk-in centres and A&E departments to this, such that if it is a medical emergency, then those can be made available too. For families with young children, we can provide a list of where the local schools are, whether those are private or state schools, and critically, how close they are to the accommodation that's been identified. Should you wish to do a little bit of a deeper dive, you can have a look and get the latest Ofsted report on that particular school to find out if that's the kind of school that is good enough to be receptive to your youngsters. We are further building out the wellbeing content so that interacts with the mood tracker. We are building out, and just if I go to the children piece, you know, depending upon how people think, there is the same piece of information from the database that's just, you know, depending upon your thought process and pathway, will take you to that very same piece of content. So it's malleable and flexible in regards to that. I will talk briefly about the community aspects, because at the moment it just talks about the importance of the community, and it's my deeply held belief that at the moment, when people leave the armed forces drives into you a sense of mission, purpose and team. And when you say, right, I'm leaving, then there is this cultural impact upon you within the serving environment that says, right, he's no longer interested in the mission and he doesn't want, or she doesn't want to be part of that team. And you go through this mild culture shock before you leave. And I think that is impacting people as they walk through the gate, to give them a sense of lack of appreciation. It's at this point when people start to sign off that I endorse them being picked up on a peer-to-peer support by the ex-military community. And so to that end, we're looking to develop this aspect of the platform into a social media platform that can support in that grouping, that pickup, the mentoring, the alumni, the groups, the regimental associations, but all under the umbrella of the Positive Transition platform and within a closed, trusted environment. Just because we're aggregating data, I'll share with you the resources. So when people come to leave, there's a significant ecosphere of information, advice and guidance. But if you don't know you need to know it, you don't go and look for it. So what we're looking to do is deliver that to people. Now, one of the best kept secrets in the British military is the Service Leavers Guide, a fantastic document that just guides people through the timelines, which we've digitized on the platform, but equally provides you with a lot of information around discharge process, your medical, departure, resettlement, jobs and housing. Now, what we can actually do with that, every content card has a rating and review system so that we can provide the positive feedback, the negative feedback. So there's this continual process of development and improvement for that community. So if the MOD or an government organisation were to buy this, what's in it for them? So what we've done as part of the onboarding process, we've developed a number of questions so that we can personalize the content to the individual's journey. You know, while all the information is out there, not all of it is relevant to your personal circumstances. So what we've done, we've got an onboarding questionnaire that supports in the personalization of the information available to you. And what that does is develops within the platform a persona around you. Now, if we aggregate and anonymize that data and aggregate it so that it's made available as a data lake, while you can't identify an individual, this will provide MOD, government, Cabinet Office, health with a significant amount of data around where the veteran community, the serving community is dispersed to, but a very, very rich amount of data upon which you can do the analytics. So I'll pause there for a couple of minutes and see if there are any questions, and then I'll do a little bit of a narrow down to talk people through some of the particular scenarios that we're looking at as vignettes. No questions? Okay, so if I share my screen again and just talk people through just the honing down of the platform. So we align with a number of strategies, particularly the NHS long-term plan, Defence Medical Services, mental health and wellbeing strategy, and that coming out of the OVA looking to deliver an improvement in the service. If we look at the various cohorts that we can support, I believe that the timeline can be delivered into the veteran and transitioning community and support it then within the serving community, as was hinted at earlier on, making sure people are better prepared. So if we look at the veteran, we can extend the sense of belonging, but equally supporting them, understanding that we as a country recognise their service. And that's the support of general information around it. We can provide the pathways into the local regional elements within Up Restore, Up Courage, Up Community. We can embed IP or whether they are natural timelines within the IPC4V or whether they are personalised timelines can be assumed into the task. For those involved in the criminal justice system, there's OpNova, and if they require access for impending homelessness, access to Op Fortitude, we can deliver that. And we see the platform very much as a replacement for the Veteran Gateway app. For the transitioning, this is supporting the family as a bubble through the culture shock and change, and it's mitigating the unknown unknowns. Broad access to information, advice and guidance, and it tends to be the non-serving spouse or partner that manages the logistics of that. It maintains the family through complex multiple considerations, schooling, doctors, dentists, and the reintegration into society, but equally supports in the decision-making process. Particularly of concern is the early service leaver who's at higher risk of mental health issues, because currently, unless you've served 6 years, there's very little financial or statutory support coming out of the Career Transition Partnership, although I will caveat that to say that that might change under the new contract. But this levels the playing field for the early service leaver, re-engages them with the ex-military community. And for the serving family, the Living in Our Shoes report, which was led by Andrew Selous MP, got a response from the government that the JSP 100, the life skills training, would be delivered into the families. But it's currently being done in a way that makes it quite prohibitive for families to be able to engage. So delivering the platform supports the life skills training being delivered to the families, and you can flavour that for the single services if you so wish. But this is something that we can deliver via the platform. It supports in community connections and communications. So, for example, on the recent last year, the Carrier Strike Force deployed and went on a world tour. This could be supported for those families that have got an account on it to be able to communicate where people are, how they're getting on, and perhaps inform families of gatherings with it behind the wire, so that there's a video conference with the various service personnel to be able to talk to the families. But this also offers, in the event of family breakup, the non-serving spouse, as they leave the the serving element of the armed forces community, can be picked up, can be informed around the support they get because they are still considered to be part of the armed forces community. So, as a platform as well, we can build out an ecosystem of support for specific cohorts. And in this bottom left quadrant, you can identify that there's going to be a massive amount of data that can be shared with academia to support in their research and recommendations around the enhancement of the specific pathways. So moving on, the benefits for the customer, and not the end customer, but moving into the customer that's looking to buy it. They get access to big data, but it needs to be underpinned with stringent data management to ensure currency of the information available. The analytics can support in not just getting a better understanding of the armed forces community, but can support in the continuous evolution of services that's delivered and recommended and supported by the end users. So as opposed to this rather dictatorial approach we have currently, we can have end user service design and development included within that. The social media element will deliver the peer-to-peer support with which the MOD has been struggling for a decade plus now. It will lower operational costs because it's digital. It's a lot more cost effective, and we believe that the platform will start to deliver a sense of self-determination for the individuals leaving, and having that sense of agency in their own life will get them onto a positive pathway into the future. And then because it's a platform that's being employed, you get not just enhanced communication opportunities, but targeted communications for such as the BAME, the LGBTQ plus community, the WIS community, or indeed general communications. And we believe that that is going to be beneficial to all. So I'll close now, stop sharing my screen, and open the floor to any questions, or be told to go away and never darken your door again, whichever the case may be.
Super. Well, before I jump in, I just want to put it out to the floor. Matthew, you've got your hand up there.
Thanks very much. This is my first one of these meetings, so nice to meet you all, and thanks very much for that, Tim. It was really interesting. I'm trying to understand who gets access to this when. So the service leavers get access whilst they're still serving once they join the programme, but then who else can get access to it and see? So does the employer get an output from it, and how does the sort of commercials work around that sort of thing? Because it's about looking after our workforce that are part of the military community.
So a lot of questions to which I could answer it in a typical sales kind of fashion. How do you want it? Effectively, we're open to any kind of conversation as to how they want to deliver it, based on the conversation I had with NHSE yesterday and people from the OVA. I believe a freemium version is made available to individuals to be able to access the information that's critical to theirs. Quite clearly, there's premium content that you can add that could be at a subscription rate that gives you access to that premium content, and then prospectively super premium content providers that might have courses that they want to deliver. So for me, just making it, GA, generally available for people to access. Particularly, one of the great questions yesterday when I was meeting with NHSE was, one of the issues within the forces community is the controlling aspect of the serving person over the spouse. If we are dependent upon giving a license to the serving person and expecting them to share it, I think that will create further control issues. So making it available through the hives, through the families officer, is something we can do. Subsequent conversations with the RFCA and DRM, so the Regular Forces Cadets Associations, who are the part of the Defence Relationship Management Organisation that manage the ERS thing. Typical military, full of acronyms, but the Employer Recognition Scheme. What we've identified in conversations with them, and I'm waiting to get a meeting with their 2-star possibly next week, is that we can absolutely create that environment where the prospective employers get access to possible digital footprints with no, completely sanitized, so no contact. My personal wish for this is the nirvana is when we can integrate, prospectively with the current holders of the SDC contract that looks after the Joint Personal Administration platform. Now, if we can start to create a digital handbag, a digital footprint of skills and capabilities, what we'd be able to do is deliver that to a candidate availability for employers that are signatories to the ERS community, can start to get access to and say, right, that's the kind of person that we're after. Now, you know, talking to BAE, I'm aware that they've got an absolute dearth of good project managers and they want to recruit out of the military. Now, if somebody's got a skill set, a digital skills footprint, and they go, do you know what, I have had it, I'm going to do the 7 clicks to freedom through JPA and sign off. At that point, we can say, well, you know, that's fine. You've decided to leave. We've got 4 employers interested in talking to you, purely based on the digital skills footprint. So we can start to do that preemptive. Mindful of current CDP Vice Admiral Phil Halley sees very much that there's a rich recruitment pool in the ex-military. Now, if we support in the delivery of a more positive leave well solution and pathway, then more people will be interested in returning if their circumstances change, you know, particularly through the Haythornthwaite review, which did a review of the incentivization of the armed forces. And they are going to be building out, the recommendation is that they build out the different service offers for the serving individual to be able to decide. Now, if we're able to do that, I think there's a fantastic opportunity for Phil to fulfill on his dream, Phil Halley, sorry, first name terms, but a bit of a name dropper. But for Phil to be able to fulfill on his aspirations to be able to recruit from that pool. So part of that group could well be somebody leaving the army and joining the RAF and possibly getting a commission, you know, somebody leaving the Navy and joining the army, you know, to move into a career pathway back within the services after 3 or 4 years out, you know, which will just positively reinforce that service offering. Has that answered your question, Matthew? I'm aware I was
yeah, I asked quite a few questions in one go, so thank you. You've done a good job of that.
Thank you.
So, Tim, I'm just going to ask you, way back when, was it 98, you said, was it?
96 when I left.
96. Yeah. So what was it about service? What was it about transition that led you on this journey initially to set up that network and then end up where you are now, having set up the company, set up the platform and engaging with all these people?
So I took the motto of Sandhurst to heart, serve to lead. And I've written possibly over 6,000 CVs since I've left, supporting people on the employment pathway. But when we set up that group, it was I served in the Royal Corps of Signals, and there was the .com boom was just about to happen. There was voice and data convergence. So there were a lot of people, you know, we had youngsters, lance corporals leaving earning 18,000 and going into project management jobs earning 60, 65,000.
Yeah.
So, you know, one of the things that we were looking to do is make sure that people were able to articulate their skills, translate them into something civilian employers would understand, and improve their prospects moving into civilian life. However, we very rapidly grew to understand that it's about so much more than employment. You know, it's about getting into the health streams. And unless you go digital, you know, I'm limited as an individual on the amount of time and effort I can put into that. So it was a natural evolution as technology advanced, the development of the platform so that we can deliver it at scale and reduce the costs of that delivery, you know, was the way to go.
And with the, you know, okay, some time has elapsed since then, but are there areas where you feel that we still need to do better when it comes to service leavers and transition, and they're setting themselves up on their new journey in civilian life?
Absolutely. We need to support the spousal environment. We absolutely need to underpin the support for the early service leaver. As I mentioned earlier, there's a recognition that they're more susceptible to mental health issues upon departure, not least the traumatization that they possibly suffered prior to joining the military. Many join, you know, to escape deprivation and abusive households. So, you know, being able to underpin that support for me, when we laugh and joke about some of the BS that comes out of our military community and the business community, but what we've identified is, as the platform, if somebody said, what are you trying to do with the platform, I would say I am trying to perpetuate the social mobility that people seek when they join the military post-service, because the inherent skills people learn while they are serving is a diverse set of skills. Being able to articulate your value when you only speak Army, Navy or Air Force, being able to articulate your value to a commercial employer is incredibly difficult. And you know, as is well recognized within many reports, a good job is a primary determinant of mental health and well-being post-service. And I see far too many people leaving, you know, wanting to step away from the responsibility and authority they had in the military and going into a role where it's very transactional, time for money. It's not something that is fulfilling. It doesn't challenge, it doesn't interest them. And number of people that I've spoken to that have left and gone into a far lower position. One guy I can think of that went into logistics, and his boss's boss's boss has him doing a lot of his work. And because that was the level he was at when he was serving. And he's now struggling to climb the ladder, because it's the old, you know, bus driver's theory that if you're very good at driving a bus, you never become an inspector, you just sit driving the bus.
Fascinating. John popped a question in the sidebar there. So to give some people some context, what's the sort of scope and scale of leavers from the armed forces per year? So
the numbers are around 14,000 from all three services each year. And it's currently around 10% of the population of the armed forces leaves every year. So if you add to that, 50% of those will be married approximately. So, you know, there are 21,000 of the armed forces community joining civilian street. We've currently got around 170,000 plus reserves in the UK at the moment. So, you know, it's quite significant. But then we've got, well, depending upon which report you read, between 1.85 and 2.2 million veterans in the community, significantly more than that if you then add the spouses, partners and dependents.
Fascinating.
It must be said that is a much bigger number than I was expecting to hear from you, Tim. Even the 14,000 was a much bigger number than I was expecting to hear.
Yeah.
I mean, fundamentally, could I just ask, do you think the nation is remotely set up to deal with that number of people entering Civvy Street each year?
Yes, absolutely, because they bring a significant set of skills and background. Sadly, the community is impacted by the rhetoric, mostly out of the unthinking charity elements of the community that would like to have us all believe that we're all mad, bad or sad. And that rhetoric, as Johnny Mercer talks about, has perpetuated. For me, the Black Country Chamber of Commerce is trying to get a lot more chambers of commerce to sign up with the Armed Forces Covenant, because people that leave the military have got a very diverse set of skills. They've got a can-do attitude. They've got a problem-solving desire. They've got a very strong work ethic, as well as being timekeeping, mentally and physically resilient in most cases. They bring a hell of a lot, and the biggest bang for the buck would be within the small to medium enterprise community. So, you know, it's no surprise that you've got organisations like ex-forces and heropreneurs that recognise the skills that people have, setting them up to deliver their own business, whether that's a lifestyle business such as well, not that it's particularly great lifestyle, window cleaning or gardening or whatever that might be, through to the entrepreneurial aspects of building a scalable business, and just the commitment to the task and the mission focus. So are we set up as a country? Yes. Could we do more? Absolutely. But just going back to the numbers, we said, I was asked around the numbers that were leaving. We've got an issue at the moment that the Army lost 2,500 more people than they usually do last year. Now, within that, we're setting ourselves up for a major issue as far as I'm concerned, because that additional 2,500 from an under-established Army anyway will mean that people will not be able to get away on courses, career courses or extracurricular courses. They won't be able to get the leave they need because they've got to stay. So that is going to lower the morale, take a dip in morale, and then more people will leave. So we're creating this ever decreasing circle unless there is a major intervention around retention, reinforcing the service offer, getting people to understand the value of what they're getting out of the services, out of being in the military, and the capabilities. And I think we can develop the platform to be able to do some predictive analysis on what their prospects are if they were to leave, and get them to stay in that little bit longer, to deliver service, develop the new skills. So we'd very much like to engage with CDP on the prospective retention crisis they've got at the moment.
It's a really interesting point, Tim, because show me a workforce out there anywhere that hasn't changed radically in the past sort of 10, 15 years, and we still are tussling with the notion or the idea that many of the younger generations now coming in are not interested in that 20, 30 year career. They're quite happily to do a short engagement, a short commission, a medium commission, say, yeah, I've done it, and off I'll go and take all the training and everything else that comes with that. And as a department, we've been very slow to react to that and change ourselves. I think the other thing is as well, and it's interesting you make that point about the impact, the secondary and tertiary impacts with understaffing and under-establishment. I would add to that is that, clearly, like many other places, we are going through a process of modernization, be that adoption of IT platforms, the MS Teams world, the SharePoint, blah, and everything else. We mentioned regulation at the start, stuff around mandated training, and everything. We are loading people in a way that we've never done before. And that's even before they get on to do their primary role.
Yeah.
And there are many folk out there who, quite frankly, exasperated by it. But there is still this thing that creeps around that, through modernization, that, there's just going to be yet more efficiency. And you hear, bless him, Ben Wallace, before he departed, standing up in Parliament and saying, look, folks, there is no more money, there are no more people, we just have to do this differently. So essentially saying, look, there is no cavalry. The 5 billion you got, it goes on nuclear and it goes on stockpiles. That's it. So it's a very difficult time for folk in that sense. And I wonder, especially with those short-term careers, what that means for the future in terms of transition and where people go to in the future.
So there are two different perspectives on that. For me, I do envisage a time where people will step into the military and step out of it, and they will have multiple instances of service after their initial stint and going through phase 1 and phase 2 training, and I think that it's going to be a lot more transitory military that we develop, And we're going to see a lot less of the, one guy that I was supporting recently had been in 44 years, went out, left short brown pants and went into long dark blue ones, Submariner. But phenomenal character. And we're not going to see that. I think that we need to identify that, perhaps the Swiss model, that you've got that sort of significant reserve capability, but people can step in and fulfill full-time roles and then step out. The military, certainly through the Haythornthwaite review, is looking at identifying opportunity for that, but it's going to require a massive cultural change, particularly within the Army. We're very fortunate the RAF, just having recently had its centenary, is a lot more youthful and agile in it's the way in its approach. The Navy and Army have far greater cultural histories that they need to shift and change.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting part of it as well is that, with the Royal Navy, with delivery now of both the carriers, the formation of the carrier task group, the littoral task groups, and combining that with the likes of CASD, it's given the Royal Navy a really tangible operational feel, and you can touch and sense that serving the nation, whereas conversely, the likes of our colleagues in the Army, they're back into that peacetime mode of, just doing rounds and rounds of training. There isn't an operational cycle for them anymore, unless you say get sent out to Estonia or to Kenya or something like that. Yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah. I don't know, did Jacqueline or John want to ask any questions and any observations for Tim?
No, I'm just being a total sponge because I'm in the last 18 months of my service.
Okay.
So, I'll be watching and trying to get access to this resource.
Excellent. Excellent. Go ahead, Jacqueline.
I just wanted to say, I too have listened with greatest interest. My background is obviously NHS and also business practice, and it fills me with hope for the future from what I'm hearing. But the other bit, which you probably don't know, my background is I have dual nationality, and I'm Swiss, and I'm absolutely, I'm also quite interested to hear your view, and I've just made some notes about it because I didn't know that it was exceptional that the reservists, can return in and into the Army, and so it's really interesting, particularly the platform of information you have on offer is really of great interest to me, particularly as I have a member in our family who's aiming to join the Army. So it's reassuring for us to hear that kind of information is available. So thank you very much.
No, pleasure. And for me at the moment, where the platform is in MVP, deployed into some of our special forces units to support those transitioning, I believe we're only scratching the surface on the amount of information we can make available, and being able to deliver these fantastic smaller organizations into so that people become aware of them. It would be exceptional to be able to develop it with some funding to greater value.
Yeah. Matthew, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, thanks. I was just I did 16 years in the Air Force in the RAF regiment, left in 2015 and went straight into the NHS. And it was actually quite a difficult transition. I found that transition really hard, because there wasn't much in the NHS to help with me understanding where my skills transitioned to. So it went at a relatively senior level, but really struggled for probably the first 2 years to really position myself. Now I'm in a kind of senior position in the organisation I'm working with, South Central and West CSU. I'm the SRO, so Senior Responsible Officer for the kind of the military element of and trying to support military people coming into the NHS, but also into my organisation, and trying to help with the mapping of transitionals of their transferable skills from the military. And it feels like you've done quite a lot of that work, Tim, in terms of mapping that out and what that looks like for some of the big program management type stuff. And I'm going through a process of trying to do that with our, internally. We're about 1,500 strong. And really diverse in the types of things we offer, really back office type services, not all clinical front facing stuff. It's really diverse. So we're going to go through a process of trying to map out what that might look like in terms of getting people to lay out what skills they want, and then trying to map that with CTP and others around the skills that are in the military to help people navigate their way to us if it's the right sort of place for where they want to be. So it's interesting to hear the kind of journey that you've been on, Tim, in terms of mapping some of those things from an individual perspective, and wanting to know how we can kind of link into that and some of that work you've done.
So what I'll do, Matthew, I'll put my email into the chat. If anybody wants to engage and have conversations such as that, I'd be more than happy to support where I can. And further introduce you to the broader NHS Armed Forces community landscape. But, in relation to the mapping, for me, when people leave, they don't really have a concept of the broader, the rich, diverse opportunities that they've got ahead of them. No. And, without wishing to be puntastic, but, it's like they've been fired from a gun and they tend to stay on the same course. Yeah. We work closely with Moresby.com, which is like a second career choice platform that starts to look at not just an individual's aptitudes, but it looks at interests, it looks at work environment, it looks at organizational structure. I meet with people. I've supported over 6,000 people on departure and got some really good friends out of it. And for me, when they look at the organizational structure, which is effectively a quadrant of supporting, leading, small organization to large organization, people sit in the entrepreneurial quadrant, preferring to be in a smaller organization in more of a leadership role. And you go, well, hang on, people leave and go, right, I'm in the military, there are 170,000 of us, I need to go and work for Deloitte or BAE, or the NHS. Indeed, the NHS is a bit of a different beast because it's made up of multiple trusts with departments within those trusts, so you are in those small discrete teams. But within the military, you've got the flight, you've got the squadron, you've got the station, you've got department, and when you as a leader, whether it's as a section commander or a battalion commander, when you make a decision, you are within the time scale to see the delivery of it. When you move into a substantial organization, you can make a decision and it can be years. You can be retired and, talking with worms before you see the ramifications of the decisions that you made. So that, that further underpins my belief that people leaving the armed forces will work within organizations that have discrete operational units or within the small to medium enterprise domain.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've heard it, Matthew, you step into health, but that was one of the huge challenges that NHS employers and Step into health had was get into that game of mapping. And the area where they did have some success, I must admit, because there was a quid pro quo involved was with reservists. because through mapping, you know, they could encourage trusts to let people do reserve service, because there were secondary and tertiary gains for them in terms of planning skills, leadership skills, you know, and everything else. So that mapping, you know, served a really good purpose. I've got to say, it's not necessarily the case, you know, with regulars transitioning in that sense, and there's still some way to go. And you know, some of our nurses in particular have, you know, a horrid time, you know, because you know, because they've had no real currency or time in NHS clinical work per se. They are bottom rung of the ladder, you know, high band 5, low band 6 if you're lucky. Yet they were a staff sergeant, ward master, or flight sergeant, ward master in Trust X. Yeah. You know, so we still have some way to go in terms of transitioning into the NHS and the healthcare world.
Yeah, we are obviously working with Deventer Health, so that is a really good link we've made, and
yeah, brilliant.
But, yeah, okay. Thanks for sharing your email. I'll be in touch. Good.
Yeah, look forward to it.
Well, Tim, thank you so much for joining us today. Really, really fascinating, and like Jacqueline said, you know, really encouraging. I think it's absolutely fantastic, and you know, it's sort of always, this kind of thing always reminds me of a chap called Eric Greitens, who's a former US Navy SEAL, who set up his own charity. You know, that the notion that someone's service stops at an end point, you know, when they hand in that mod 90 and start their new journey, is rubbish, actually. You know, many more will continue to serve, but in different ways. But so thank you so much, Tim. That's really, really great. John, I know you're struggling voice-wise. Did you want to say anything in closure?
Just thanks to Tim once again. Thanks to you, Paddy, as ever. We'll see if we can get a few more people to the next military special interest group event. And Tim, I think Jade is going to be in touch with you to discuss whether and how we might use the platform to get our mentoring program within the Institute up and running. So you might, if you're on this call via recording and you're watching it, don't be surprised if you if this is not the last that you see of Tim. Thank you very much.
Fantastic.
All right, I'm going to go.
Very much.
Thanks so much, Tim. Really appreciate.
Super. I hope you're feeling better soon, John.
Thanks all.